You're listening to Metal and High Heels, the official podcast from the magazine about metal, lifestyle, and entertainment.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal and High Heels podcast. This is episode 90 already. We are almost at the number 100. My name is Pia, and I'm here today with my co-host Kiki. Hello, Kiki.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
And we have a very special topic today because mostly we are talking about music and stuff connected to that. And today we will talk about a video game, but that video game also has to do a lot with music. And we have a guest today. His name is Arnold, and he took a big part in, actually producing this game or making this game, actually. So, hi, Arnold. Please introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, and explain a little bit what you're doing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arnold. What I'm doing is a great question. Originally, I'm a composer for video games. So I was doing music for video games for the past 10 years. And even more originally, I had a band named Kiki, and we were a progressive symphonic metal band. And when we were working on our second album, we wanted to make something more special. So I suggested maybe making an album as a game. And that was 5 years ago. And since then, we became Kiki. Well, Kiki, the band, became Kiki Productions, which is now indie game development studio. That's pretty much the base of the story.
So your former band became this gaming gaming company, so to speak. So is the band part of the company as well?
No, not really. It was started by the same guys. As the project progressed, we brought like famous musicians, or musicians at least from famous bands, to make the music itself, like to record it. So from the original band, I think at the moment I'm the only one in the company. Mm-hmm. So it was like a transformation from just your average band to a company, studio, never startup. I'm never sure how to name it, but from the original founders of the band, I'm the only one who's left.
And do you still, or music is a big part of this game, as I already said. Do you play an instrument also in the soundtrack, so to speak, of the game, or is it by all these musicians that are featured?
Originally I'm a guitarist, but I always thought of myself as a composer mostly. Mm-hmm. So the music is composed by me. I think that the soundtrack does have a few lines that I recorded, and then they just stayed there. But the vast majority is recorded by the famous artists, let's call them. I'm pretty sure there are a few lines here and there that are left from my demos, but
okay, cool.
But all of those are by mistake.
Okay, so let's make maybe two parts of our chat. Let's talk about the video game first, and then about all the other musicians and the cooperations that you've done.
Mm-hmm. So you already said that this has been in the works for around 5 years. And on the website of Kiki Productions, I found a video of a gameplay demo from 2015. But it actually looked familiar. Have you been releasing stuff since then? Videos and demos and teasers since then already? Or did you start with that part of the promotion just recently?
So, by the time this is online, the website is probably going to be a new one because the website is very old and outdated. So the video that you're watching is from the very first prototype that we did when we started the project. It was maybe 2 months after we started. And also we're always confused when people ask us like, when did you start? Because like, you know how it goes. There is like a big difference between when you think about, like, was the project started when you thought about the idea? Was it started when you wrote the first song? Was it started when you recruited the first team? So
That's a very good point.
so there isn't like an actual date where I can say, you know, this project started exactly then. The idea, I think, started flowing around 2013 maybe, and the actual like game development started around 2016. So it's, I'd say 2015, 16 is where we actually like started doing it, you know, seriously full time, let's call it, with an actual team. And before that, we were playing around, and making this prototype was part of the playing around.
All right. Was the video public back then? Were you already reaching out to audiences in 2015 or 16?
Yeah, so back then we were naive and stupid, so to say. Like truth be told, it was quite an insane journey on that front, because again, we were a metal band, and then for some reason we decided that we can make a game. And whenever I tell that to people from the gaming industry, they laugh. Like usually all the media coverage that we're getting from the gaming side focuses on that. That's like, how the hell did a metal like band turned into a gaming studio? So our first plan was to actually just do the music and maybe hire someone like work for hire. Again, we were kind of, you know, starting our way and doing very stupid things. So the first thing we did is go to huge investors. I'm talking like people who invested into Facebook and stuff like that, saying like, guys, we have this brilliant idea, you know, like imagine an album which is also a game, and now give us millions. And then we were very surprised when that didn't work. So we were like, okay, maybe we need a demo or something. And we did the demo, and we opened a Patreon page, and that actually worked. We got a lot of support, and some people were helping us. Like it wasn't big numbers, but we had some support from the community, and that video was released like at that time. It was to show it to investors and publishers and stuff like that, but also to kind of this is the first thing we show to the world, like we're going to do this. Which, by the way, if you would ask me today, I think like releasing something that early was a mistake, because the game looks nothing like that video like nowadays. But yeah, that's how this video came to life.
I see. Honestly, this is to me a really cool origin story.
Yeah.
I think the best ideas start from that kind of passion and wanting to combine two passions and two things that you really like. Kind of like how we started with the magazine. What?
Yeah, we were very different in the beginning than what we are doing
as well.
True.
Exactly. I like that a lot. And also, you have to have some kind of crazy idea nowadays to be able to draw attention to yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell a funny story about this, that because I was the only one from somewhat the gaming industry. Again, I was working like as a composer for games, so while I didn't know the technical side of it, at least I knew people who were making games, right? And I was the only one in the band. And when we came up with the idea and we decided to go for it, I remember like sitting them down and explaining to them that I don't think they know what they're getting into. And I was like, look, making games is really hard. Like, you probably don't know this, but it's really, really hard. And I was giving them like this whole speech. And the base point of it was that, like, if we're actually going to do this, prepare that it's going to be 10 times harder than what you think. And then whenever like I get asked, you know, like a tip I would give myself, go traveling back in time or something, I say that I would take myself to the same talk and explain to myself that whatever I'm thinking, it's gonna be a lot more hard and a lot more crazy. Yeah, like looking back, this really is. So the game is like finally being released on May 20th. And looking back, it's kind of, I can't believe that we made it. You know what I mean? It's like it. I don't know. Like looking back, it really, really was a crazy idea that like the chances of it becoming a reality were pretty much zero.
But now it is. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So the game is called Of Bird in Cage. Please tell us a bit about it. What is the game about? What's the story of the game?
So first of all, I'm gonna explain a little, like a few things about it, because I think this is important to understand before we start talking about it. The thing that makes this game so special is because, as far as I know, and I'm pretty sure I know, this is the first album completely released as a game. And to be more exact, as a story-driven game. Now, there were some places, like projects in history that obviously try to combine gaming and music. Obviously, Guitar Hero comes to mind, and all this like rhythm games genre, stuff like that. There was a project called Karma Flow, which is really interesting. But I think this is the first time where it's like the playing the game is the same as listening to the album. Like the music never stops, it never changes. You press play and you're experiencing an album like you normally would experience music, but also there is a game that you're playing at the same time. A good way to explain it to non-gamers would be, imagine a 2-hour-long video clip that is as interactive as a game. Like you don't just make choices once in a while, but you're actually completely free to roam around, shoot, talk to people, I don't know, whatever.
I have a question about that. Sorry for interrupting, but that was going to be one of my questions, because that confuses me a bit. The description also says that you discover this 2-hour symphonic metal album. So does that mean that the playtime of the game is 2 hours, or how can I understand that? What happens to the music when I run around and talk to people, to NPCs in the game?
So the music always stays the same. Like we had 2 rules when starting this project, that whoever we brought to the team, we said this is like non-debatable. Like we can talk about anything, we can change anything except those 2 main points, which is the music never stops and it never changes. So Karma Flow, for example, which probably we'll talk more about this project at some point. But in any case, it's also like a metal-oriented game. But the music there depends on the player's actions. So depending on what the player does, the music kind of changes. And this is usually how game music works. So it's called adaptive music, and it's a pretty common thing in gaming, where you have some soundtrack, and then the soundtrack knows how to change based on the player's action. In this case, it's the other way around. And this is why I'm saying that this is... I'm not, by the way, even saying that it's a good idea, but it is very special in that sense, that I think this is the first time where this is being made, that the game changes according to the music, which always stays the same. So, for example, you can, let's say you're running down an alley, which is the video that you mentioned, right? The alley will always be the same length. So you are running for, I don't know, the metal part, which is like 1 minute exactly, right? And at the end of this minute, something will happen. So if like you can succeed to run away from the guy, you can fail, you can turn left, you can turn right, different things will happen depending on what you do. But no matter where you go, all of those branches are always synced to the music, and the events will happen when something happens to the music. So for example, you go from a verse to a chorus, right? So maybe some event will happen there. Flashes all around you in the world. Doesn't matter what you do, the game will always stay in sync with the music and change based on your actions.
So after 2 hours, I will be done with the game no matter what I did. If I do nothing, I might be killed or whatever. I don't know.
I was going to say, what happens if you go AFK?
You actually can go AFK. It's fine. It's in that. well, that also connects to the story a bit, but the story is that you're being kidnapped. So you will be kidnapped. Things will happen around you. It's kind of like real life in that sense. You know what I mean? Like the world will continue with or without you. So imagine you're on a train rail. So the train, has a path, and this is how Gita's life will turn out if you don't intervene and change anything. But you can also change the outcome and take the train to different rails. So yeah, you can go AFK and just watch it as a movie. I'm not saying it will be the most fascinating thing you ever did, because like there will be moments where you're supposed to explore things and you don't explore, so you just stare at a wall. But technically, yes, the game is 2 hour long, and if you don't once you're past the tutorial, there's like a tutorial to teach the player what to press and stuff, like most games. But once you're done with the tutorial, you can just stop playing, and the game will get to the end on its own.
Okay. Wow. So I have a pause button, right?
Yeah, you have a pause button. Also, I'm a bit exaggerating because between songs you need to load things, so you do need to press like continue once in a while. But yeah, and then, by the way, you can go back and change your decisions and explore, what would have happened if you would succeed or like fail at different things or make different choices. So like, let's say one run through of the game is 2 hours always. But you can, like an album, you can listen to it, I don't know, however
again
much
and
you
again,
want. Yeah,
with different endings.
Yeah, and in this case, like have different results and different, visuals every time you play.
Okay, so is the game more comparable to games like Heavy Rain or Beyond Two Souls and Until Dawn, where there is also a lot of actions and the different endings, more possibilities of endings, or is it more like the Telltale video games or something in between, like Life is Strange? To which one of these could I compare it?
It's a very interesting question because, like, I didn't realize gaming so well until now. Because all of those, I mean, all of those are like the same genre technically. It's like asking, I don't know, like, okay, so it's like doom metal, but which exactly doom metal are you like doing? It's generally speaking, like all those games that you mentioned are considered like story driven.
With different decisions that you can do. But in the Telltales, you have different paths that you can go, but they always lead to the same ending, like also in Life is Strange. Life is Strange even more is...
You have two endings.
You have different endings, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't have so many options. You have maybe 3 decisions that will influence the ending of the story, but you don't have so many possibilities like in Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls.
It's some okay. So I'll start by that. When like you remember, I said when we are explaining the game to non-gamers, we say imagine a video clip 2 hours long and all those stuff. So when we're describing the game to gamers, we always say imagine Life is Strange if it was a rock opera. Okay. So Life is Strange is a very good reference for us. Also, graphics-wise, like it has a lot of Life is Strange-y vibes to it. It's a bit more active than that. Like we have a lot more mechanics, like I don't know, shooting, running away, jumping, fighting, like melee fighting and stuff like that. So I would say it's Life is Strange, but with more active playing in many places.
Bit touch of Heavy Rain.
Yeah, Heavy Rain is like a QuickTime event based, so we have a lot of QuickTime events. And endings wise, I can be pretty upfront and say that we have let's say around 8 endings. It depends how you count, but somewhere in that area.
Okay. On which platforms is it available?
Aha, I have a funny answer here. So on May 20th, it comes out on PC. Now we'll choose my words carefully. It was rumored to also come out to PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch soon, although we never officially announced it. So what I'll do is I won't deny it.
But you can't tell us a date or something, or if it will happen at all.
Yeah.
Okay. How many people have been working on the game?
A lot. Again, depends how you define working. So the studio is pretty big, actually. I don't know how this happened, but we kind of became the biggest indie studio in Israel, which is not that impressive because our indie gaming scene here is not huge. But the studio is 21 people at the moment, like working full time.
Mhm.
With I don't know, around 20, 30 freelancers also working with us, and also we had some people who changed over the years. So I'd say a total of probably 60, 70 people were involved in the project's development, not including like publishing and translations and stuff like that.
Okay. You already said that you have different ways to explain the game to gamers and to people who are actually into music. But how does your target group look like? Is it mostly gamers or mostly music lovers, or is it music-loving gamers only?
Great question. We've been trying to figure that one for the last 6 years or so. I mean, when we pitched the project back in the day for investors and stuff, we said that our audience group was rock and metal lovers who have at least one game on Steam or any other console. So anyone who likes rock and metal and play the game, like a PC or a console game in their life, at least one. I'm guessing we will have some people who install Steam just, for the first time to play this game because they are coming just for the music. I also guess that we'll have a lot of people that just see this on Steam and they are pretty into it. But they're not specifically like huge music lovers. But I think that's our demographics, like gamers who are into rock and metal, which, by the way, fun fact, we did a research about it, and it's a lot bigger than you would guess. Like at least from our research back in the day, around 67% of gamers mostly listen to rock and metal.
Damn, nice.
Yeah. Like, we're not a research company, so maybe our research was completely flawed. But what we came up with, at least, it's that gamers are actually metalheads.
Yeah, but you might be right, because there are also some people like Kiki's husband who only listen to metal while gaming, for example. So it fits pretty well most
Sometimes,
of the time.
yes.
Yeah.
I also think that, like, how to say this, like, researches aside, I think, like, on the instinctual level, like, most people kind of see that those things go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Most of my metalhead friends are gamers and the other way around.
I think also both scenes consist of outsiders or nerds, so not mainstream people, so to speak. So I also think that there is a big a mix, or that many people who listen to metal also are into gaming, like Kiki and me, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was also thinking. I was also thinking right now, if we think in cliches, people who are not gamers, they're outside. Of course, they're listening to pop. No. But what you were just saying made me think that you are not releasing the music only. Will the music be available on streaming platforms or as even a physical CD album?
So we've been, it's again one of the questions that we've been deciding for the past many years. If I'm completely honest, yesterday we had another meeting with our publisher about this, and we still can't decide 100%. And like, we have pretty much exactly 21 days to decide that. I think, yeah. I mean, ideally, we want the people to play together. I obviously won't mind. sorry, I'll phrase it differently. What I'll say is that ideally, in my ideal world, I would want whoever buys the album to be able to play the game if he wants to. And obviously, if you play the game, you'll get the album, or you are able to listen to the music just because you bought the game, and you can't have the game without the album. So I definitely wouldn't mind people listening to it without the game. I think it's a much better and more interesting experience if you do it with the game. But like, we won't prevent it, so to speak, from
from happening.
Yeah, and also I can give you a bit of a scoop for this show. So the music is probably going to be like copyright free. We don't want, like, we want people to be able to stream it and share it as much as they want, and financially speaking, we're more, depending on the game sales. So even if that's the case, and that's gonna be the case, even if we don't upload it to Spotify, then someone will.
Yeah.
So
YouTube,
yeah,
for sure.
At the end of the day, yes, you will be able to listen to the music without the game.
Yeah.
Cool.
Before we talk about the music more, so the game is about a young woman who is addicted and who has a very specific relationship to her drug dealer.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the story is very, very, very dark. It's not. I mean, one of the interesting things we have with this project is that usually when we're saying, "Oh, we're making a metal album as a video game," everyone are like, "Ooh, that sounds dope," And we're like, no. It's like a very heavy story-oriented game, and the story it touches a lot of very sensitive subjects. So basically, at the base of it, it's a rewrite of Beauty and the Beast, a very modern, dark, and twisted version of it. And basically, it's about Gita, who's young. She had a very bad life involving some domestic abuse, and she's a drug dealer. She's a drug addict. Her boyfriend, if that's the right word, is also her drug dealer, and then her life is not great, to say the least. Her dad and the whole family has some trauma, which I won't get into because it's a spoiler, but something bad happened there, and at some point she gets kidnapped by someone, which she doesn't know why. And with time, she starts identifying with him and seeing the good side of him, and she learns about him, and she understands what's, and in her mind, let's call it, he turns into Prince Charming, which is Beauty and the Beast, right? What actually happens is she develops Stockholm Syndrome, which is where, people who are kidnapped just start identifying with the kidnappers. So yeah, that's the very base of the story.
Okay, and then you have about 8 different endings of how the story can turn out.
Yes,
based on your decisions or actions.
Yeah, I will also say that there is 3 acts in the game, and the second act is pretty much the end of the Beauty and the Beast part, and Act 3 is our own addition, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
And what exactly inspired you to adapt this specific tale of the Beauty and the Beast and that problematic?
Well, it started with a bar conversation, like always, where someone said, have you ever thought about this story? This story is doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It's there is a girl that is being shipped off to a beast, and then suddenly, also if we take the Disney version, she starts talking to dishes at some point. And then suddenly he turns into a prince and everything is cool. And it's yep, she's definitely losing her mind. That's literally what happens. And we had this really interesting conversation of suddenly realizing that this is an awful and terrible story, which we were told to as kids, and suddenly we realized that, like, we've been lied to. You know what I mean? It's like
Everything about it is wrong.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what actually happened there is completely different, but our parents told us, like, oh, they changed the actual terms of what happened there so that it's suitable for kids.
And that it's a love story, and
yeah, it's like I have a very funny interview I made once. It's somewhere on YouTube. You can search it, where, like, I'm talking about this story, and I was a bit drunk in this interview, and that's exactly what I said. Like, at the end of the day, it's a long story, a very fucked up and dark love story, but a love story. So, I mean, if I'm honest about the whole story, I think we did good on that front. I think we made a lot of mistakes along the way, and looking back, obviously there are stuff I'd be happy to improve, as with any art you create. Story-wise, I think we did really good, and I think it's a really interesting story because you have the whole Beauty and the Beast aspect, and when you go deeper into that, it's like, who's right, who's wrong, what do we really know about the Beast, right? Like, because everything is told, like, pretty much from, like, Belle's perspective, and then maybe he's just a psychopath. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the first conversation we ever had about it was like, maybe she's wrong and he never turned into a prince and he's just a psychopath and it's all in her mind. Or maybe he really changed because of her and for her. And so on. So you can, like, tackle it from a lot of different angles, which is kind of what we try to do.
Cool. How much research did you do about this specific Stockholm syndrome that you already mentioned as well?
I never know how to answer this question. Like, we talk to people that know about this. We did a lot of reading. In one conference that we actually met a guy whose dad or grandfather were, like, part of the incident that the whole syndrome is called because of. My English is going away suddenly, but like, there was
I can
one
relate to
incident
that.
where there was, like, one incident where this got the name from. So I don't know, a fair amount of research. I'm not sure I have a really good answer here.
I mean, it's. I think it's just important to get yourself informed. Before you start working in such a with such an important thematic or such a deep subject as well.
It's like I have to say that, like, okay, I'll have a moment of honesty here, and I'm talking personally me and not representing the company for a second. I think it took us a while to realize how, I wouldn't say like how serious, but how important it is to treat the subjects that we have in the game correctly. I don't think we fully understood it until day one, and until we saw people playing it and reacting to it. Like, for me personally, at least, it took a while to understand that what we're what we're doing can impact people.
It triggers people.
Yeah.
Or it can trigger them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was a very big struggle within the team itself, because like every team, our team is global. So what you get is a lot of very different mentalities. And on those, like, let's call it, subjects, like the Israeli mentality is not the same as a Brazilian mentality and not the same as a German mentality, right? So you need to tread carefully between dealing with them on one hand, because I believe art should be dealing with them. On the other hand, exactly how, and everyone has their own thoughts and their own lines when it comes to that. And yeah, it's like, it was a struggle. I'm also sure that a lot of people will hate it because of that, by the way. Like, I'm completely sure about that. But then again, I also keep reminding myself that it's art at the end of the day. It's fine if people hate art.
Yeah, but it's a cool side effect that you also educated yourself through the process.
Yes. And it would be even better if you could, if that would be a side effect of the game, so to speak. If people would also educate themselves, that's the right word, exactly, about all of this.
Yeah, although I want to mention something that came out in a lot of PR meetings we had, for example, is that, how do I phrase this? The game is very not there to teach you anything. You know what I mean? It gives you a given situation, which is obviously bad, and then you decide what you do with it. And you can do pretty much whatever, well, not whatever you want, but the choices are pretty wide. And I'm not sure how people will take that. My hopes is that good, but I don't think that we were trying to say, hey, look at this. This is a good thing or a terrible thing. It was more of a this is the situation, and let's explore how things can develop from here.
It's maybe a bit also like with music, or when you write a song about a specific topic, then people can decide for themselves what they do with it. If they just listen to it and don't pay attention to the lyrics at all, so they never find out what the song exactly is about, or maybe it touches them because of the instruments and the melodies used. And some people might also read the lyrics, think about the topic, find themselves in there, or maybe even find a topic which they think, oh, well, that's interesting. I never thought about the world like this, and I want to learn more about that. So
exactly, that's what I meant. If it wakes up some curious side of the players, so that they want to dig deeper in this subject, that would be an awesome side effect. And Pia and I had a quick conversation before you joined us, and it was about the protagonist being a female character, and her being, like so often or in so many stories, the weak person who has to be freed or free herself, right? And as much as I also think that this is a very difficult tale, and this is specifically a difficult tale to gender reverse or to play around with, I also think that nowadays we have to be conscious about those portrayals and at least talk about it, at least have a conversation about it. And but on the positive side as well, the protagonist is a woman. We also don't see that in games that much. So that is a bonus point. My question was, how many women were in your team? And how much of a concern was that?
So it depends on the timing of the company. I'd say between 25% to 50%. That's kind of the area of women in the development team. Again, it changes, over the years. That being said, I think those are pretty high numbers, because I think that in general in game development there are less females, sadly.
And in metal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this concern came up, even though there was the starting point of we're doing Beauty and the Beast, so it's not like we sat down and we were like, okay, do we have a female protagonist? Do we have the idea of making an album that retells the Beauty and the Beast was there before we even knew that it was going to be a game. So by the time we got to the game, it was already a given that we're gonna have Gita as the main character. So we it wasn't a decision we ever thought about. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, I think.
But was it a topic also for you? How many women are in your team?
Honestly, Okay, again, I'm not, for a second, I'm gonna do a disclosure, me personally, not company-wise. For me personally, no, but that I think comes from a good reason. I really don't care who the person I'm hiring is. I care what he is doing. So if he's a great animator or she's a great animator, it's awesome. If he's from Ghana or if he's from Germany, as long as we can pay the salary, we will take him. Generally speaking, I don't really mind the. I don't know how to carefully phrase it. Like how many of each group the company has, and if we are correct on this term. I think my job is to create a great company and find the best people to do it. So.
Yes, we could go on for hours on that topic, actually. But for the purpose of this of this interview and this analysis of the game, I would say we can just continue. The fact I think it's actually a good thing that whether or not that was I don't know, that was ideal in our perspective of, or at least my perspective of wanting everything and everywhere to be richly diverse in all of the identities, which I think is also beneficial for the product or for the work of art in the end, to have all these different perspectives. The fact that your company or your team has already involved, as you were saying before, people from all over the world is already probably very enriching to the content. So yeah, I mean, everything is a process, and as you said yourself, right? We are all growing, and we can all learn from all this process and make things better in the future. And we have delved a lot into the game. I have one more question about that. You've been talking about investors and things. How did you then finally get the financing to make this?
So there were a few stages to that. The first one was Patreon, which, again, when we were just planning the idea, just had one prototype. We opened the Patreon and we went on Twitter and we were searching for people who are into gaming and metal. And then we were sending them cute sticky notes of like, help our patron, please. and that worked. So our Patreon got to, I think at its peak at like 3K a month, something like that, which isn't a lot by any terms, but it suddenly opened a lot of possibilities for us. Like doing the project with 0 and with 3K is a huge difference.
Of course.
We were able to, hire some freelancers here and there and go to gaming conferences. And in gaming conferences, we met our first investors. They are a Polish studio called Robot Gentleman. And yeah, they became our investors. Nowadays, we're really good friends. But we actually met them at a business meeting. And after that, and that was like the beginning of the financing, and then we hired people, and that's kind of what allowed us to build the company. And later we signed a publishing deal with All In Games. So that's pretty much the funding for this.
Cool. So you reached out to your community before really building it.
Yeah, also the community, it really helped having a community when talking to investors, because let's take 2 years before that, when, as I told you, like the first thing we did when we came up with the idea was go to investors. And like literally imagine a pitch going like, hey, we have this crazy idea of making a metal album as, a video game. We have no experience in making games. We're a metal album, like a metal band, not a huge one. Like we were doing okay in Israel, but and we have 0 money. We have 0 people. We like, this is how our first pitch sounded to investors. Versus like 2 years later when we already came with a prototype. And then also a big part of it was like, hey, look, like we already have an active Patreon. People are supporting us and giving us money. We did pre-sales at the very beginning of this project, and it sold like 3,800 copies under 24 hours, which was crazy. So when we came with all that to investors, and it was more of a like, hey, we're actually doing this thing and we can actually do it. Like, we still screwed up. For example, our first contract, release date talks about, I think, May 2016 or 17. So we're like 4 years late now from the first investment contract. But so like we did screw up a lot along the way, but hey, but we kept our promise. Like, we actually did make it. So that's something.
Indeed. And it was actually quite a surprise. I had it on my Steam wish list since last year. And all of a sudden it was like, it's coming out and it's like next month already.
Yeah.
It went from to be confirmed to 2 months afterwards or something like that, in 2 months.
Yeah, that's because we couldn't decide on a release date. So by the time we decided, it was already like, well, the game is pretty much done. We are ready to release,
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your musical background? Since when have you been playing guitar? Do you play any other instruments?
Been playing guitar since I was 14, I think. Because I started because I wanted to be the cool kid in school. It didn't really work that way, but so for the first few years I studied on my own because my parents didn't want to pay for lessons. And I remember thinking, okay, like my goal was to play Nothing Else Matters. And then I was like, I'm going to play this song and then I'll be out. Like that will be enough to be cool. Then, I don't know, after a few months, I was able to play Nothing Else Matters. And
it doesn't sound so difficult to learn.
I mean, going from nothing, it's not that easy. But then, I don't know, a few months in, I was like, I knew how to play Nothing Else Matters. I still wasn't cool, so that was a disappointment. But I was completely hooked on playing, and I was sure that I was going to be a guitarist. Then I studied pretty much by myself, but very seriously. Like I would play 6-8 hours a day. Then I wanted to go to MIT in the US. Got in. Instead of that, I went to the army because Israel, you have to. And then after the army, I went to study music in a college here in Israel. And by that time, I got really into Dream Theater, and specifically Scenes from Memory. This until today, by the way, in my mind, this is the most brilliant piece of music ever written, including Bach and stuff. And I kind of figured that this is what I want to do. Like, I want to create music that tells stories. And I was kind of lucky that I figured that very early, that I don't so much care about playing. I don't so much care about composing beautiful music. I like to support stories with music. And so I went to study film scoring, even though I didn't really have any interest in composing for films. And my dream was to just compose metal concept albums. But that's why I went to study film scoring. It was thematic composition, where you're composing something for the story.
Yeah.
So I did that. I was all done with studies, and then I was like, "Hey, I'm also a gamer, so maybe that's a good direction to go to." So I started going to events and doing stuff like that. But I kind of got lucky because back then being a composer for games wasn't a thing. So I kind of was at the right place at the right time. I think I was one of the only maybe 2-3 people in Israel at least saying that's what I'm doing in life. I'm a game composer. So I kind of started the same time the industry here started, and was kind of, I don't know, lucky to get a career out of it. And yeah, this is my probably way too long and too detailed musical history.
But now that you mentioned Dream Theater, what do you think about the Liquid Tension Experiment album that just came out recently?
The new one.
Yeah.
Not as good as the first two, but I think I'm like I like they're so iconic for me that like ask me that in 4 years.
Okay, but happy that there is a third one.
Yeah, I'm happy from well, now I'm gonna be like the super fanboy, but if every note that comes out of Petrucci, I'm happy.
What else do you listen to? What are your other musical influences?
A lot of game soundtracks, progressive, I don't know, Opeth, Dream Theater, Symphonics, stuff like that. A lot of symphonic metal. Probably, I know this will sound funny, but if you look at the Birdcage, like musicians, they were brought in by oh, those are my favorite musicians. So Within Temptation, Epica, I don't know, Therion, Evanescence. I love Evergrey. Love them, like one of my favorite bands. I love a Russian band named DDT that no one knows. So mostly like symphonic progressive metal, but also a lot of random stuff from different places.
Yeah. I guess that already answers my question of how you selected the musicians you wanted to work with for the game of Bird and Cage, but how did you get in touch with them?
So that's a question that I wish I had a super cool answer for, but I don't. I emailed them. I mean, it's I was able to find a few emails of them. I think the first one I talked to was Casey from Camelot. Now he's like playing with Queensryche, but back then he was with Camelot.
Mm-hmm.
And I messaged him, and he was awesome. Like he was like, I sent him the idea, and he wrote to me like, "Dude, that sounds awesome. I'm in." That was his message, and like email me more details too here. And then it kind of went from word to mouth, and it became a lot easier because like once we had like the first 2 or 3, and I think the first
Mm-hmm.
2 were Casey and Rude. Rude, our band was talking to their management about touring with them, so I kind of remembered that he was a gamer, so I messaged him, and he really liked the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And once we had Casey and Rude, it was a lot easier to A, get to people, and B, to like get them to agree. Also, money helps.
Yeah.
It became even easier when money appeared. But
yes, and some of the musicians that you are working with that, we haven't really mentioned yet are Cobra Page from Cobra and the Lotus, Rob Vandalo from Epica, that's my favorite band, Danny Worsnop from Asking Alexandria, and you just mentioned Rodioli from Within Temptation. And there are many, many others. So it's actually a pretty impressive lineup, quote unquote.
Thank you.
So, I am really looking forward to this.
Me too. I am not having a heart attack at all. It's I'm doing great.
You have to tell us though about the shows at the gaming conventions. There is at least one video out with a really impressive performance with orchestra and everything.
That was something unexpected along the journey. Okay, so opening a studio is a crazy thing, and you find yourself doing like insane stuff you never thought you would do. And that was one of them. So at some point I was talking to a conference that had like a show of music soundtracks. It was like a classical show. And I was talking to the organizer, and he was like, "Hey, why don't we do something from Birdcage?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds fun." And I don't know. Then we did, and it was insane. For me, it was personally insane because like my dream since I decided to become a musician was this. It was like I said, I was into, symphonic progressive metal.
Mhm.
And I don't think a lot of people get to actually realize this dream of like playing with a live orchestra.
Yeah.
So I worked with orchestras before for game music. So it wasn't new to me. I worked with metal bands, obviously. That wasn't new to me. But finally, I was like able to realize this thing. And I literally, until today, I'm pretty sure those, like, we played just one track there, but this one track was before the one after Witcher 3 and before League of Legends, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. So it was like, those games. And Austin Wintory from Journey, who's one of my, let's say, top 3 favorite composers and like, inspirations on the game music side, was like, he also went to this conference and conducted his own piece. So I was like sitting next to him. Yeah, I literally think this was the 6 scariest minutes of my life. And I'm not exaggerating. Like I don't remember them at all. But I'm pretty sure it was awesome. And then after that, we did it a few times. We did it at the Nordic Game and in GAC in Poland. So it was always fun. In Sweden, we did like a whole show without an orchestra, but with actually all the guys. So we brought Bumblefoot and Rob and Rude and Cobra, and we just did rehearsals for a few days, and then we played the live show that was synced to the game. So we had like a streamer playing the game. But the music was, instead of an album, it was played live, which was a technical nightmare.
That's amazing.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's the first time this was done in history. After doing it, I understand why. And I mean, really, the amount of technology that ran during those like hours is impressive. It's like impressive that humanity can do all that.
Yes.
And that the system didn't break down.
And the streamer was able to broadcast the live music.
Yeah, you can actually find it on YouTube. His name is Sam Chaotic, and there is a whole show of him.
We will
playing
put that in the show notes.
Yes.
And it's what was I gonna say? Oh, about the thing not breaking down. I have a really funny story about that, but if it's a bit long, but if it's too long, just cut it out.
Okay.
No.
So when we started the rehearsals, we found a bug that almost every time we would get to a loading screen, the game would crash. Now, normally when a game crashes, like it happens, cool, no problem. Problem here is that if the game crashes, then it's like sunk from the beginning and reload the screen. It's like, it's a whole nightmare, right? So we ran the game at the rehearsals 21 times. The game crashed somewhere in the middle, 19 out of those. So by the time we started the show, we knew that it was gonna crash. And zero solutions, like 7 programmers working 24 hours a day trying to find this issue. No one has even a guess. So when we went on stage, the first thing we did is we decided, well, we know that this game is going to crash like somewhere mid-show. Like, again, it wasn't even a question because it happened 19 out of 21.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, we have a brilliant plan, which was brilliant, by the way. So we went on stage. Ben, my co-founder, started talking, and I started pouring like really nasty shots. So I put like whiskey and ketchup and jalapeno and marshmallow and Coke, and I made like those terrible shots. And then we made a game out of it. I was like, well, this is Ben, he's our producer, so he thinks that he did a good job and the game is not going to crash. So we have a bet. So if the game crashes, he's going to go on stage and do a shot every time the game crashes. And if it doesn't crash, then I'll go on at the end and do all 5 shots. Like, in a row.
That's a great bet, yes.
Yeah, and then we thought, like, while we were starting the game and, all this embarrassing thing is happening. Also, this was Nordic Games, which means, like, there are 3,000 people in the audience. All of them are the, top seniors of the gaming industry, at least the European gaming industry. So
damn.
when a game crashes, it's pretty embarrassing. And then, so that was the plan. So we thought like, well, at least it's going to be super funny when that happens, and everyone will be like, haha, Ben is drinking marshmallows. Thing is, the game didn't crash, and that was a miracle. And at the end of the show, if you listen to it, you can hear 3,000 people screaming, "Drink, drink, drink, drink," and that's me going on stage when no one thought there is any chance of this happening, and drinking those terrible, terrible things I made for Ben, but ended up drinking myself.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
We will link that in the show notes for sure if we can find it.
I look on the video on YouTube. The last few seconds of the video is people screaming, like the crowd screaming, "Drink, drink, drink."
Okay. So, just imagine you could go on tour with the project, and you could choose again which musicians you want to take with you as a band. You can choose from any musicians that are alive, or also from the musicians that already died. How would your band look like? You can put yourself on the guitar.
For this project or any project? Like I'm assembling my dream team for a different project.
No, for this project, but you can choose from every musician that has been alive or is alive anyway.
So if it's for this project, then wait, you said this project, right?
Yes.
Okay, so for this project, the cool thing is that this is actually really close to what I would choose. I know that like this is the very expected answer, but it's the truth, because this is how those musicians ended up there. So I would have someone from Dream Theater. I would have Petrucci. Like even if he's playing on a banjo, I will have him. So I would love to work with Petrucci someday. Hopefully I still get the chance, but that would be awesome. Michael Romeo from Symphony X would also be a great addition for guitars. Problem is I'm gonna have like 7 guitarists. since you said you can choose anyone, so I'm like, yeah, sure, let's have like
all of them.
Yeah, let's have like 7 7 guitarists.
But it should make sense at some point.
Yeah. I would be happy to work with Simone from Epica. She's always been one of my favorite singers. Daniel Gildenglau would be also definitely doing some of the vocals. Would definitely keep Vidi Dolev, the guy singing now, like Brest, the main role. He's not that famous, but I'm not exaggerating, he's the best metal vocalist in the world, if you ask me. Like, and by the way, he wasn't supposed to be in the project. Like, what happened is that we had a pretty famous singer in mind, and we already talked to him, and that was kind of the plan. And then I asked VD to do guides for him, and then he sent us the guides, and we were like, "This is Bress, like this is not a guide. This is like the take." So I would definitely keep VD.
And you canceled a celebrity? What?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I don't think he's super sad about this. Like I don't think it influenced his life that much, and he was sitting in his castle thinking, like, oh, when will Birdcage call me? But
you never know.
But yeah, that was actually, I'm pretty proud of this choice, because it was pretty early, and back then we had this like still thought of like, how to say this? I'm not sure we understood how special it is what we're creating, so we still had like an imposter syndrome, let's call it. Even though I'm pretty sure I still have that. But back then, like having big names was still really important for us. I'd say today it's less of a big deal. But back then, making this decision of like a relatively unknown Israeli singer versus like someone pretty big from the metal world, like it was one of the moments looking back that I'm really proud that we made, that like we went with the artistic truth in this case, because we thought he was more right for the role than, you know, the big name.
He is pretty impressive from what I have seen and heard. The one of the videos from a live performance that you have online is really mind-blowing. His performance of the song. So yeah, I think at this point we could, as I said, keep talking forever and ever. We didn't talk about Karma Flow, and we didn't talk about a Brutal Legend. We didn't even mention it. I thought that would also be like metal and games. Those are the ones, but also metal and games, or music in general, and games are actually an important topic nowadays. I think the music business is actually considering doing maybe something like Off-Bird and Cage on many different levels. I think they are realizing that the gaming industry has a lot of money.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah, right?
I'm actually I'm gonna rant now. I don't know what your question even is, but this will end up with me ranting about the music industry.
And the mic drop in the end.
Perfect. We can do that. So nowadays, music is already looking into marketing through gamification, through apps and through, game-like stories on social media and stuff like that. The apps are mostly, the typical cheap, well, not cheap, but, inexpensive templates that you can customize a little bit. You can probably customize, the design and colors and make them according to your release, your album, or whatever. Because obviously a story or in general, a game like the one you made has a lot more work and costs a lot more money than musicians can invest.
Yeah.
How do you think it would still be possible to combine these two big markets and make it sustainable for bands big and small, to get some source of income, or just produce maybe some more multimedia pieces of art?
Okay, so I will rant now.
Yes.
A good start would be, because as funny as it is, I think that this question, I'm actually one of the more qualified people to answer, because we went through all that. Like we talked to labels, we talked to game publishers, we talked to private investors, we talked to startup investors, we talked to angels, we talked to accelerators, whatever. And about this like combination of gaming and
music.
Yeah, and I will kind of say that, at least from my perspective, the fault why this hasn't happened yet is the music industry, period.
Of course.
And I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, right? It could have been also the gaming industry's fault that they don't understand music. But gaming, the music industry is really, again, by the way, stuck 20 years behind. No one there understands gaming. No one there is trying to understand gaming. Mm-hmm. You're talking to huge publishers, and they are like, it's hard to explain how little they know about gaming. Like, even just understanding what it takes. So, for example, we had a meeting with one of the top labels in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And they wanted to check the possibility of making a game for a huge band that everyone here knows, but I'm going to skip names, right? Then we're starting the meeting, and and then they're asking like how much this will cost, and we're like, well, like, depends on the size and the graphics and what we do, but maybe it can start from $500,000 and go, from there. And mm-hmm. at this point, and by the way, they're really nice people and everything, but at this point they stopped the meeting and they were like, yeah, so we were like going into this meeting by thinking, you're going to say a number, then we're going to say like maybe 15, and then hopefully we can decide on a 20K. And if you're saying like 500,000 is the minimum, then like what I'm trying to say is that they don't understand how the thing works. Same logic we thought about licensing music, like doing like Birdcage but for a band. And we talked to the band, and their music is owned by the label. So they connected us to the label, and the band was telling the label, hey, we want to do this. At which point we started talking to the label, and the label was like, right, so we want like a licensing deal. And we were like, wait, but we need to find budget for this, like, and it's doable, but we need to do all that. And they were like, yeah, we want like, I don't remember, like let's say 30K. It wasn't 30K, but somewhere in this area for the licensing deal, which is kind of funny because they got really stuck on this point where we were like always like, guys, we're only going to do this whole thing if we raise around $1 million. So we need to go to investors and publishers and stuff like that and tell them, hey, like we have this LOI or something, like not even an actual contract, right? That we can license, like use this music and do this and use the band image. And they got stuck on this like 30K licensing. This is how we work, which, yeah, I'm just ranting as promised. I think the music industry doesn't realize games and that what they know is exactly on this level. But like 5 years ago, they weren't understanding anything. Now the understanding can be summed up to, oh, they have money.
Yeah.
And by the way, if there is one thing the gaming industry hates is this. Because as you said, like I know this will sound funny, but gamers are like today's gamers are the 80s metalheads. They are the uncool, unpopular kids that when they grew up, people told them like, and our parents told us this is not a job. And suddenly we are this $165 billion dollar industry a year, while music is somewhere around 10. And people from my generation, let's call it, don't really like when people are like trying to get into gaming because there is money in it. So usually there is a huge miscommunication between there, and at least from my experience, and I'm coming from the music industry originally, it's completely because of the music industry. They, I don't know, need to learn more about gaming and understand how this thing works.
Yes. And then,
sorry for the rant, and I don't know if that answered the question, but
never sorry. No, it's obviously way more complicated, right? We would probably need many other episodes to discuss all of this. But it also comes back to copyright laws being so complicated and so outdated. Yes. Copyright laws are over 100 years old and still have the repercussions now that, for example, there is a huge community on Twitch still suffering and still mourning the death of Twitch Sings, right? I don't know if our listeners know about this, but Twitch Sings was this karaoke game made for streamers, and the licensing was apparently, well, this is all Twitch never really offered a statement about their decision of stopping Twitch Sings, but there are rumors, or their most logical rumors are that the licenses were just getting too expensive and they couldn't keep up giving us music for free to sing onto. And meanwhile, Twitch is owned by Amazon, and Amazon has Amazon Music, which means they have the licenses to a lot of music, probably all the music in the world, right? And I don't know how that's not compatible. If they have licensing deals with music publishers and labels, how is that not compatible to let just people freaking sing karaoke? Like, I get also really worked up about that because I am one of those people who are still mourning the death of Twitch Sings. But I mean, those laws were not made for the internet age, and it hasn't come to the lawmakers internationally, or maybe there's not enough of a lobby from the music industry to make these copyright laws fitting to the age that we live right now.
Yes, it's a huge problem, and as I said, like from our perspective, like as I said, we're gonna make the game like the music completely free to use.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But also, if I'm honest, it's not just because we're so nice. You know what I mean? It was more of a like, no, don't want to deal with this. Go away. Like, do whatever you want with the music. Bye-bye. Because as you say, the laws are insane. And it can fall on like tiny stuff because, in I don't know, 80 years ago, someone changed the law to do something that doesn't make sense today anymore. There's a lot of clashing between like music licensing and games, and that's, it's not a fun subject. And someone needs to solve it, and it has to be the music industry, because games are like okay with paying for stuff, and somehow it always gets stuck on the music industry, and this problem never gets solved. And if you ask me, it doesn't look like it's anywhere near being solved.
Yeah, and it seems also, with the numbers you were just mentioning, it seems also to me like a bit of a vicious circle, because while independent musicians do crowdfunding campaigns for whole albums and get whole albums funded by 10, maybe 20,000 euro, and if you then are looking at, you have to look to almost millions to be able to produce a game like that, to tap into this market for real.
Yeah.
Then it needs a bigger investment that the music industry is probably not ready to make.
Yes, I will say 2 points here. One is that independent musicians also, and labels, by the way, nowadays, like back in the 80s, the labels were the evil monster that takes all the money from the musicians. I don't know if anyone checked on labels nowadays, but they're not doing well. Like even Universal and those guys are not doing well, definitely the smaller ones. The music industry, not by its own fault, but kind of became a bunch of hungry wolves. You know what I mean? And everyone are like very busy with surviving. And it's not because the people are bad. It's because, like you need money to survive, and suddenly, like the labels suddenly are interested in this licensing deal now, and not let's see what happens with the game in 4 years. So, like you said, it's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yes.
For example, Birdcage, I can give that as an example. We don't have a label. And we don't have a label not because we didn't talk to labels. We don't have a label because, and again, you know what? Maybe the music is crazy bad and no one wants it and cool. But at the end of the day, like this project didn't find any label to work with, right? Which to me is a bit funny because, again, on the money side, I don't know, we're probably bigger than the labels. The marketing budget that we have is probably bigger than any marketing budget that any band in the symphonic metal genre ever had. And we didn't even care about the money so much. But there isn't like a common language to talk. So whenever we were talking to labels, they were super confused about what do we even want. Our team didn't understand why are they there even. Like we actually had people in our team, like when I was talking to labels, asking like why, like what will they do for us? So I think those two worlds like have a long way to go until they are united, even though there are so many reasons to unite them.
Yes, that's true. And I think, that's a good ending for this episode. But we've been talking about gaming and music so much that I have a small recommendation for you people out there. Because if you listen to this episode, you might probably be in both, in metal and gaming. And there's a band out there. Right now they're quite small, but I think they might get big in the future. They're called Horizons, and they made a song about the game Dark Souls. And there is also a video out there with footage from the game. And the song is basically about the game, which I think is a really cool thing to do. So, Thank you so much, Arnold, for being here, for being our guest in this episode.
It was super fun. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, thank you people out there for listening. You can follow us on Spotify and Stitcher or wherever you listen to the podcast, so you'll never miss another episode. And you can find the show notes to this, where you can also find all the videos that we mentioned during this episode at metal-and-highs.com/podcast90. Yeah, and we're also everywhere on social media. Arnold, where can people find out more about Of Bird and Cage?
So the best place is on Steam, where they can wishlist it and then get an email when it's released on May 20th. Now I'm doing advertising.
Yeah.
So go on Steam and wishlist. That's the most important thing. We have a website of birdandcagegame.com and Facebook, Twitter, the usual stuff pretty much. Google it, YouTube, and start with Steam. This is usually the best place to start.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. So thank you. And also a big thanks goes out to the band Mercy Isle, who made our jingle, which is based on the song Storm. I always mix the album title and everything. But yeah, the song is called Storm. And the album is called Undying Fight. So check them out if you have a minute. Yeah. So thank you for being here. Thank you out there for listening. Have a good day, night, evening, whenever you listen to us. And yeah, bye-bye.
See you around. Bye.